Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you on Thursday, one day away now from Mikel Arteta's press conference ahead of Arsenal's final game of the season against Wolves. That'll be tomorrow at London Colney at 1:30pm, so keep your eyes peeled for all the usual stuff from that. Not too much going on at Arsenal at the moment in the build-up to that one. Mikel Arteta's been speaking ahead of the game. He did an interview with Sky Sports yesterday. He said a couple of interesting things, I thought, ahead of it. Just talked about the season as a whole, sort of reaching the target of Champions League, but, feeling... I'll read you the quotes anyway. This is what he said. He said, "We've achieved reaching the Champions League with 5 or 6 games to go. We finished second. I think we've developed a lot of players and taken them on a very different stage of their careers, and they have contributed to the team exceptionally well. We've created and developed a huge relationship with our fan base and created something special around the team." So if I look at it that way, there are a lot of positives to take from the season, probably more than we expected with the capacity, ability and resources that the team had. But as well, we spent 248 days on top of the Premier League, and at the end we didn't have enough or show enough to win it. We tried our best, but we made some mistakes, and that cost us. So summing up the season there, he then looked towards the summer as well. He said, "I think we are in a moment of our journey where we have built a lot. We have a great foundation and we've become really competitive. But now I think it is the time to press the reset button and go again. We have to be faster, more determined and ruthless because the dimension that opens up now is bigger, but the margins are really small. So we have to be really smart." Interesting comment there, I thought, from Mikel Arteta when he says, "I think it is time to press the reset button and go again." Sounds quite dramatic, that, when you think Arsenal just finished second, had their best season in a long, long time, and yet Mikel is talking about pressing the reset button. And in a way, he's right, because I think getting to where Arsenal have got now has been a big jump, but getting to the next step, which he will want to do, as difficult as it will be, is huge. How do you close the gap on Manchester City? How do you overtake this Manchester City side? That is so difficult to do. Only Liverpool have done it in the last 6 years. How do you do it? How do Arsenal take that next step to be able to not just compete or go toe-to-toe with Manchester City, but actually beat them? That is going to be the big thing for Arsenal. And I think when he talks about the reset button, I think that's because it's going to be a fairly drastic summer once again at Arsenal. There's going to be lots of changes. We all know, kind of looking at the incomings, who potentially might arrive or who the club are looking at, the key targets. But I think one of the big things, if not the biggest thing almost, is who is going to go this summer. Because for players to come in, players have to go. And I think it's I've talked about it before. I just think it's such an interesting part of this summer. Who is going to leave? How much money are Arsenal going to get from them? So I thought I'd look today on this video on the players who I think could well leave Arsenal, or the players who might leave Arsenal this season, this summer, should decent offers arrive. I mean, some of them are pretty obvious. Others, I think a lot depends on what sort of money. We'll start with Emile Smith Rowe. I mean, it's going to pain me if Emile Smith Rowe goes. I really don't want it to happen. I want him to stay. I want him to get back in the team. I want him to do what he did last season. I want him to be given the chance. I don't think he's been given the chance. I don't know why he hasn't been given the chance this season. Mikel Arteta clearly is not playing him for some reason. I know that Emile's fit. He's healthy. He's pain-free for the first time in a long time. But he's not playing, and that's down to Mikel. He's choosing not to play him. Against Nottingham Forest at the weekend, when you're losing 1-0 and you need a goal, he brings on Fabio Vieira and leaves Emile Smith Rowe on the bench. I mean, it just says it all, really. And it just makes you think that he could well go this summer. If a big bid comes in, if a decent bid comes in for Emile Smith Rowe, you would think, if Arteta's not using him, then you would entertain that offer. So I think, you cannot rule out Emile Smith Rowe leaving this summer. I think there's going to be talks at the end of this season. Certainly Emile Smith Rowe's people are going to know what on earth's going on. Where does he stand? And I think there'll be plenty of interest in a player of Emile Smith Rowe's quality. And it's going to pain me if he goes. I really don't want him to leave. But, it wouldn't at all surprise me if that is something that happens. And especially when you think Arsenal are looking at Mason Mount. They're very interested in Mason Mount, who you just look at what position he plays, where he could fit into this Arsenal team, and you just think, that's a position that Emile Smith Rowe operates in. And if you're going for Mason Mount, what does that say about Emile Smith Rowe? So I think that's a possibility. You're looking at what Arsenal turned down, I think 25-30 million from Aston Villa a couple of years ago. Sort of laughed Aston Villa out of the building when they came in for that sort of money. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of money, if they do sell Emile Smith Rowe, they're going to want this summer. if Mason Mount's worth, I think Chelsea want about £70 million for Mason Mount. So what's Emile Smith Rowe worth, even on a bad season? It's not like Mount's had a good season for Chelsea. He's not. He's had a poor season. So, and Emile Smith Rowe's got a much longer contract than Mason Mount. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there with him. But I certainly think you cannot rule out Emile Smith Rowe potentially leaving this summer. So there's one. Granit Xhaka we know all about. He wants it announced before this home game against Wolves on Sunday. Where we were Thursday now, and it still hasn't happened. It's not saying it won't. There's still a couple of days to go, and talks are ongoing with Leverkusen about over a deal for £13 million for Granit Xhaka. I think it will happen. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, but it's not been finalised. By the time of recording this video, it hasn't been finalised yet. It might be announced later today. We'll have to wait and see. But as of yet, I'm just told that it's ongoing and that the clubs are still in discussion over Granit Xhaka. But you would think he's certainly one who is potentially, if not certainly, going to leave for about £13 million this summer. Charlie Patino, I've reported on what's going on with Charlie before. It's been agreed between Arsenal and Charlie's people that he could be sold this summer. He can be sold this summer. He's got 2 years left on his contract, but that's only a option from his original contract that was taken out. He's not been given a new contract. There's an understanding at Arsenal that at the moment there isn't really a pathway for him, and they don't want to just sort of hold him back. There's no point sending him out on loan again, because then when he comes back he'll only have a year left on his contract and you get less money. So it's been agreed that everyone can sort of sit down, work things out, try and find a good club for him, and he can move on. I don't think Arsenal will get massive amounts of money for Charlie Patino. He's had a good season on loan at Blackpool in the Championship. He's hugely talented, but I think this deal will be heavily weighted in terms of buyback clauses, matching right clause, sell-on clause, all that sort of thing to sort of protect Arsenal's interest when it comes to Patino. But I can't imagine, you're not looking at a £20 million transfer fee for Charlie. I think, like I said, it will be sort of heavily weighted with the clauses in that. Kieran Tierney, now that's certainly a player I'm expecting to leave this summer. Again, almost like Smith Rowe, I look at it and think, what, do you really want to sell him? You're going to weaken your squad, really, if you're going to sell him? Is that wise going into the Champions League? But I think from the player's point of view, he knows he's not really first choice. He knows he's not getting many minutes. He's been frustrated this season, hasn't had that much game time. He's at a stage in his career where he wants to play. You've got Newcastle in the running for him, a team who are now in the Champions League. He'll be looking at that. It's closer to Scotland. It's Eddie Howe's a manager who's always liked Kieran Tierney. He wanted him when he was at Bournemouth, and it just ticks a lot of boxes. And I think Arsenal will be looking at that. They know they need to get some money in this summer, and you've got a potential big money deal there for Kieran Tierney. So that's what I fully expect to happen. How much they can get, I don't know. Arsenal spent about £30 million to get Kieran Tierney. They're certainly not going to want less than that. So you're looking at a very big transfer fee there. And the fact it's Newcastle, the fact they're in the Champions League, and the fact there might be other interest, Aston Villa have been linked, that might help driving the price up as well. So I do expect Kieran Tierney to leave Arsenal. Nuno Tavares, remember him, had such a good start to his loan spell at Marseille. He's tailed off a bit as the season's gone on. If Tierney goes, you're looking at that and think, do you really want to sell Tavares as well? He could potentially come back, be second choice, but Arteta didn't really trust him in his first season at the club. I'm not sure he's going to trust him now, especially not when it comes to Champions League. So I think Arsenal's focus will be signing a new fullback who can potentially play left or right back. And if a bid comes in for Nuno Tavares, who Arsenal only signed for £7 million, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he is a player that they are open to selling this summer. And the same goes for Sambi Lokonga. Hasn't had a great spell at Crystal Palace when he went on loan. Didn't help that Patrick Vieira left soon after he arrived. Clearly, Mikel Arteta hasn't been too impressed with him since he's arrived at Arsenal. I'm not surprised. I still don't really know what sort of player Sambi Lokonga is. He's talented, no doubt about it, but he just doesn't really play with any sort of personality on the pitch when I see him. He's had plenty of chances, he hasn't taken them. I think if Arsenal could get their money back or close to their money back, then they will do. Burnley, I think, is a very, a possible shout. Vincent Kompany was his manager at Anderlecht, absolutely loves him. They're in the Premier League. They're going to look to strengthen, whether they can come to some sort of agreement, whether it's a sort of loan deal with an option to buy, or if they stay up, I don't know. Whether they could afford him outright, we'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at Burnley. But I think he's certainly a player that if a decent offer comes in for him and the opportunity to move him on arises, that Arsenal will look to do that. Okay, Reece Nelson. Out of contract. Arsenal have offered him a new deal. He hasn't accepted it. There's been more than one new deal offered that he's rejected as well. So it's highly likely he's going to be going on a free transfer, which is a shame because I think he's had a good season this season, and he's shown that he can still, he can do it at this level, and he's a very handy option in the squad, but I think he's looking at it and thinking, you know what, I'm not going to play much next season. I'm 23, 24 now. It's time to move on and really try and make my own career here. So I can understand why he would be doing it. Arsenal will still try in the next month or so, I imagine, to get him to sign. They might go in with one last offer, but at the moment it's looking more and more likely that Reiss Nelson is going to head off. Following Balogun, I think he definitely goes. I'd be shocked if he stays at Arsenal next season. He's only got 2 years left on his deal. He's had a brilliant year in Reims, in France. His value is just skyrocketed. At some point, you know, clubs have got to make clever decisions, smart decisions. I think they look at this and think he's not going to sign a new deal. He's only got 2 years left on his contract. There's loads of interest in him this summer. He's coming off the back of a fantastic loan season where he scored lots of goals. We have to sell. We have to cash in when his value's high. He might go on and be an absolute sensation at his next club, but that's a chance you've got to take. I think it's like a Joe Willock type of deal. You've got to take advantage of the loan spell he's had and how much clubs are willing to spend. And you know, Arsenal could get big money on Balogun. They could potentially protect themselves as well with some clauses included in that deal. So I think Balogun goes, and I think he goes for big money this summer. Cedric Soares, 1 year left on his deal. When he comes back from Fulham, I think he wants to move on. Arsenal will try and move him on, so I expect him to go. Pablo Mari's already, you know, that's done. That was part of the loan deal that he signed initially over in Italy, and who was it? It was Monza, wasn't it? And they've stayed up, and that means that the clause has been activated. They have to sign him on a permanent deal. I think Arsenal get about £6 million for Pablo Mari, so he's another one who's gone. Ainsley Maitland-Niles is out of contract. He's going. He's already announced that. Austin Trusty, I think, is a player who could potentially leave the squad this summer. Had a very good loan spell at Birmingham, was named Player of the Season at Birmingham. And, you know, he only arrived last year. I know, you know, I spoke to him, I did an interview with him, and he said his dream was to make it at Arsenal, but I'd be very, very surprised. I think they're going to look at that and think, yep, make a little bit of money on him, move him on and let him go and have his good career. And then you've got sort of Nicolas Pepe and Rob Holding. Nicolas Pepe, it's mad to think about it. You know, Arsenal's club record signing in £72 million. How excited we all were when he signed, and now he's got 1 year left on his deal. Everyone's basically forgotten about him. You've forgotten he's even an Arsenal player. And, you know, what are Arsenal going to do? Are they going to have to just pay him up and let him go for free this summer? Which just seems crazy when he's cost so much money. But there's just not going to be a market for Nicolas Pepe. There's just not. He's on too high wages. You know, this is an example of the awful transfer strategy that Arsenal had under the previous regime. And he's had an all right time back in France with Nice on loan. But he's not done enough, I don't think, for people to come in and pay money. Whether, you know, big money for him. He's only got a year left in his deal. Clubs are going to look at that and think, we're not going to do it now. We'll just wait till next season when he's a free transfer and see what we can do there. So it's going to be really difficult for Arsenal with Nicolas Pepe and what they do with him. I can't imagine he's going to come back into the squad next season. I think Arsenal will try and get him off the wage bill, and it wouldn't surprise me. And this isn't anything I've heard, so don't take this as gospel, but we've seen how Arsenal operate with some players that they just can't find buyers for, who they just want to move on and sort of bring an end to the story. And I do wonder if that might be something that ends up happening with Nicolas Pepe, and it'd be a shame, but it might well come to that. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully someone does put down £10 million and they are willing to take on his wages, but we'll have to wait and see. And finally, I'd say Rob Holding. I think he's another player as well. You know, he's shown when he's come into the side at the end of this season that, you know, he's not really at the required level. Arsenal aren't going to have Europa League next year. It's going to be Champions League, so it's going to make it even harder for Mikel to sort of rotate and bring in squad players that he doesn't really fancy or doesn't really trust their level. He's such a popular player at Arsenal. Mikel loves him, the squad love him, but, you know, you can only sort of rely on that for so much. It comes to a level when Mikel talks about a reset and going up to the next level. I think you're looking at players like Rob Holding. Arsenal are going to try and sign a centre-back this summer, and so I think if an offer comes in for Rob Holding, he could well go. So, I mean, just going through those, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12... 13, 14 players I've listed there who could potentially go. I'm not saying they're all going to go, but they're the ones who I think you look at and think Arsenal gets a lot of money for some of these players. Others are going to go on free transfers. Others like Pablo Mari are already gone. Then you've got some difficult ones with certainly Nicolas Pepe. But, you know, this is the reset that Arteta's talking about. I think it's going to be a really, really busy summer. Lots of players heading out and then players coming in. We know about Declan Rice is a big target. Caicedo's very much fancied as well. Mason Mount, who David Ornstein's reporting is leaning towards a move to Manchester United at the moment. He's a player Arsenal very much liking, have held talks over and are looking at. And there's going to be others as well. Like I said, centre-back, definitely a full-back as well. So it's going to be a really busy summer. Like Mikel Arteta says, it's time to reset and go again. And I think that's what we can all expect. So we're going to be busy. It's going to be exciting. Let's see how it all goes. Anyway, that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. Anything you've agreed with, any of these players I've talked about, who you think should stay, who do you think should go, how much money do you think they should get for these players, please do let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back tomorrow as we gear up for that final home game of the season against Wolves at the Emirates on Sunday afternoon. Have a great day, everyone. Speak to you soon.